back to my original role, which I preferred anyway. And Martin Balsam came down and played the Colonel. With all due respect, because he was a great actor, but none of us was as good as Stacy Keach.
So how did you hatch this idea to do this TV special? Was it while you were on the set that you started talking about this idea, or what was the genesis of it?
Well, Art and I became friends, and then we went back to Los Angeles, and the house you see featured a lot in the documentary. And Art introduced me to Paul, and I think CBS at that time wanted to do a special. They were doing their Bridge Over Troubled Water album.
Right.
And they asked me if I would go out and meet the top documentarians in the field. So I went out and met with Albert Maysles and 3 or 4 others, all incredibly accomplished documentarians, but they all had their own vision for it. And I had the idea that the special would reflect what was in Paul's songs. Mm-hmm. Paul's first wife accused me of just manipulating the songs for the purposes of the special. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think so. It certainly represents what Paul and Art and I felt, so I don't know. What's a little ironic about this, to get off the point for a moment, my total experience in working in television was I had been in a 3-week period, a 6-week period. I was working for Candid Camera, and I'd been fired 3 times in a 6-week period. That was my background when I took this on. But whatever the credits say, there were so many people who contributed so much more than you would get if you look at those end credits. Mm-hmm. Because the editors, the camera people, with anything, there's so many that make contributions that nobody can even keep track of it. So our names are on there at the end, but it's a big joint effort.
Right. So what was the process of shooting the special like? I mean, I would imagine it'd be hard to keep a straight face with Charles Grodin asking you questions off camera, but you were out on the road. I mean, where did you actually shoot it? Do you remember where you were on the...
Well, I see the typical life on the road, and it could almost be any place. When mm-hmm. Paul is singing Mystery Train, that Elvis song, mm-hmm. he's lying on the bed. This is the Holiday Inn of all the 50 states. And it cuts to the plane and the sleeping, catching your sleep on the plane, and all of this is so essentially life on the road mm-hmm. that I'd be hard pressed to name which town it was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was the process like for you? You were on the road with them, traveling.
Well, I was thinking backstage whether I would tell this, but I've already told worse than this. We used the facilities of somebody, I'm not even going to mention his name, it's not important, it's on there. This man was known as the father of video verite, meaning the father of documentaries. He may have given himself that title. He had facilities on 5th Avenue, and he sat behind a big desk, and right above his desk was a big portrait, do you remember, of Nelson Rockefeller?
Yeah.
And he was he was supposed to be the executive producer and the executive in charge of production. In fact, he had nothing to do with it. It was his facilities. And I remember showing Art and Paul and this man a rough assemblage. A rough assemblage is before you get to a rough cut, and a rough cut is before you get to something closer to what you see here. It was the first assemblage of the material. And I remember standing in this little editing room, and he's back there, and he, can't forget it, he said, this is not airworthy. And we all walked back to his office, and the 4 of us were sitting in his office, and this man who was making his own version of this, the making of a song. I don't know if you remember this, but he was in an editing room making his own version, the making of a song.
I remember thinking, we got to get rid of this guy.
Well, he then said to me, I think for the good of the special that Chuck should remove himself, basically, and I should take over. He said this. And then I remember Paul and Art and then this guy, they're staring at me. They couldn't possibly have known that I had already survived being impeached as president of my 5th grade class. And being kicked out of class constantly in high school. berated by Uta Hagen when I came to study acting in New York, and going head to head with Roman Polanski and Rosemary's Baby. So this wasn't the first time somebody like said, you know, you should just go away. And I, without missing a beat, I said, I think an even better idea is that, Bob, you go home. Because you have nothing to do with this, you're not interested in it, and I'll work through the night. And I remember doing this, working through the night, and I'll show another version of it the next morning. And we all went in the next morning and saw the next version, and then this same man that said this is not airworthy, the next morning said, that's the best rough cut I have ever seen in my life.
Words are cheap.
In other words, he wanted to hang in there.
Yeah.
And we didn't see much of him after that, but his credits were executive producer and executive in charge of production. And I personally went into the editing room, and I don't know which one, I didn't see the end credits, but one of those credits is missing. And he was going around asking, where's my credit, executive in charge of production? And no one wanted to tell him that I had taken a pair of scissors, cut it off, taken it into the men's room, and I'll leave it to your imagination.
So you finish the special and you take it to Bell Atlantic, who's supposed to AT&T Bell Atlantic, yeah. And what was their reaction when they first saw what you had done?
Jeff and Melinda here? If you're here, I apologize because they've heard me tell this story so much. The head of the man from NWA Advertising met with me alone in a room at on Fifth Avenue, and he was livid. I've had people be mad at me, but not like that. I mean, he was furious. And what fascinated me is I had no idea at all. Usually I know. But I had no idea what he was furious. And he was pointing his finger at me and said, you're using our money to sell your ideology. Completely, sincerely, I said, what's my ideology? And he said, the humanistic approach. And I, again, not trying to be a nice guy, I said, you mean there are people against the humanistic approach? And he said, you're goddamn right there are. The southern affiliates of AT&T are not going to want to see little black children going to school to the white system. Now I'm just on record, which as you can see I pretty much am all the time anyway. And he said, I'd like to make some changes. Now I'm just, what would that be? He said, when Coretta Scott King says poverty is a child without an education, I'd like you to lower the sound. I said, lower the sound to what level? He said, inaudible. This is 1969. I want to say right here, just because it's been on my mind, what's really depressing and upsetting to me about seeing this now is nothing's changed. In fact, I think it's gotten worse. I think we've gone downhill. We're in more countries fighting more people for reasons that have to be explained better to me. And just this past, within the last week, when Senator Hagel was up for confirmation as Secretary of Defense, and Senator McCain, who I've known for a long time, he's a very nice man, but he really went after Senator Hagel and says, you were against the surge in Iraq. Yes or no? He says, well, Senator, yes or no? So Senator McCain, he still thinks we should be in Iraq, we should be everywhere where we are. And somebody will have to explain to me why the kids are getting killed. You'll read in the paper every day, but the young men, young women are getting killed. Like if it's about terrorism, I always say, protect America. Do everything you can to protect America. Invade my privacy any way you want to. I'm not hiding anything. You can see what books, whatever. But I don't know what the kids are doing over there now, and it's very upsetting to see that nothing's changing. It's just been, and incidentally, in 1977, President Carter issued a pardon to all the people who invaded the draft in Vietnam.
Chuck, what do we think of my comment about the kid in Iowa who is now in Vietnam and can't make sense of it? Now I'm older. I look at this as somewhat naive. Well, don't you have to face up to putting your ass on the line with people who don't like America and force our hand? I act as if we can only stay clean and keep our hands clean, that would be preferable. It seems naive to me now.
Yeah.
Well, I had a conversation on when I was doing my show at CNBC, and Walter Cronkite pretty much said the same thing you did, so you're in good company there. And he said he would tell his son if he were drafted to go to Canada.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's naive, and I don't think you should go to war if you don't believe in what you're fighting for. I would avoid it at any cost.
So Art, were you surprised by this reaction from the sponsor? I mean, did you know that you were doing something potentially controversial, or did you?
I was surprised. I didn't realize how political we were. I didn't realize how we were being seen as Democrats.